The Final Frontier. These are your adventures as you explore, seeking out new life and civilizations, expanding your borders and exploiting the resources you find, befriending allies, or exterminating the foes that get in your way.
Contact detected entering sector. Configuration unknown. Assessing. Initiating countermeasures.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Star Trek New Worlds. That's right, we're back, we're here, we're ready to rock. It's an exciting day. Excuse me as I catch my breath. Whew. Had to rush and get some coffee because you know, if you've watched this show for any length of time, it is the coffee that keeps me stimulated, lubricated, and giving you the latest and greatest news of what's going on here in Star Trek New Worlds. But if it is your first time here and you're wondering, Tony, what in the world is Star Trek New Worlds? It is a turn-based strategy game that we play here online with you. We play it inspired by the rule set of Federation and Empire, as published by the Amarillo Design Bureau, and the magic of the map that you will see here momentarily is brought to you through Vassal. So today is an exciting day. A couple of interesting changes. So no galactic news today, but I do have a special guest advertisement that I think some of the players at the very least will be interested to see. So we'll put a pin in that ever so slightly. I see there's chat already rocking and rolling. We're in the double digits for the live stream. Thank you for all of you who are catching us live. If you're catching us on the replay, thank you for taking the time. And a big shout out to the Warbird01, our latest subscriber. If you are a fan of all things Star Trek turn-based strategy and just sci-fi in general, then please be like Warbird down there. Hit that subscribe button, give us a thumbs up, tickle the algorithm in just the right way, and follow along for the latest and greatest story developing news, the narrative twists and turns that we'll be taking along this path that is Star Trek New Worlds. Okay, so before we go too far, before we get too excited, I want to quickly, excuse me as I keep trying to catch myself here. I want to tickly, that's right, that's a word. I want to quickly take a moment and recognize the sponsor of today's program, which is Ryan's Red Shirt Recruiting. Here we go. Hi, your favorite Starfleet cadet here. Are you finished? Are you frustrated with a failing front line? Are your bases blowing up? Do you see lights in the sky and think those are your ships going bye, 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 bye? Ryan's Red Shirt Recruiting is the answer to your interstellar woes. Ryan's Red Shirt Recruiting finds, trains, and rhetorically rehabs the best starship officers for your floundering forces. Need captains to command? Ryan's Red Shirt Recruiting will transport tactical scale tippers to your tarnished command chair. Looking for ground forces to assault that base? Ryan's Red Shirt Recruiting will land ludicrous numbers of cannon fodder, elite operatives to overcome even the best defenses. Ryan's Redshirt Recruiting has a 100% satisfaction guarantee. Should your Redshirt recruits underperform, we have a hotline ready and waiting for your combative complaints. Refunds are quick and quantitative. Just energize your defunct Deadpool to our return department, and you will get your money back in 12 to 18 months. Ryan's Redshirt Recruiting, filling your personnel requirements, one merc with a mouth at a time. There we go. All right. Volume seems kind of low, says Matthew Landers. Well, give us a shout out, all you other folks that are listening and watching. How does the volume sound to you? Matthew, if it is just you, by chance, perchance, maybe, there is this little button on most phones and many TVs. It's called the volume button, and we can turn that up. Now, I say that with just a little bit of joking and jest. It's totally possible, maybe even likely. There is a technical issue on my end, and it wouldn't be the first time. So thank you for letting me know. Big Slow Target, Lost Muskrat, Bill Smitty, Daniel Eastland. Let me know if that is the same for you. Okay. So Matthew, thank you. Matthew Landers, thank you for joining us here on the live stream. And if you're like Warbird01, of course, hit that subscribe button. And if you want to join us in the chit chat, the back and forth, the witty banter, you can do so over at our Discord channel. Just head over to coffee.com/newworlds, and you can join us at the Coffee and Discord tier and join us for the chit chat. So without further ado, let's jump into an analysis of the economy. Let's take a look. All right, so this is turn 74. What are things looking like here and now? As you can see, the Paravians have fallen from their lofty heights to the low of 40. That's 4-0 right now. You can see we've basically broken us up into 4 groups. We have those that are suffering. Perhaps we should put them out of their suffering. Those are the Paravians. We have the first cluster of folks, which are the Tholians, the Lyrans, and the ISCs. You can see 74, 78.5, and 80.5, all sort of relatively close to each other, clustered there on the graph, the blue, the yellow, and the red. The next grouping of those folks is the Borak, the Hydrons, and the Kzinti, all in the low to mid-90s, which arguably is also really close to the Federation. The Federation is sort of, due to a lack of growth on their end, the other 3 are sort of catching up to the Federation. So maybe the Federation is becoming part of this 3rd tier. And then the 4th tier, or maybe the 1st tier, depending on your perspective, is the Carnarvon and the Klingons in a stratosphere all on their own. 126 and 138 respectively. Now, the Carnarvon at 126 certainly highly separated from the Federation, their next closest neighbor, lower on the economy scale. But the the growth of the Carnarvon economy keeps going, and they're certainly separating or opening that distance between them. But even though they are growing at the pace that they are still quite a ways, over 10 points, 12 points here, away from the Klingons, who are riding high at 138. I mean, is it conceivable that we could have the Klingons at 150 EP and the other majority of the factions almost at 50% of the Klingon economy alone? That's kind of where things are going here. It's crazy to think. It's hard to see. I don't know. It's pretty nutty as far as how the economies are going in this game. Also, it's interesting to note as an experiment. So the New Horizons campaign in this game. So New Horizons is the campaign we're talking about right now. We have Splintered Will, which is our 2nd game that's currently ongoing. We made some changes from the previous campaign, which was the New Worlds campaign, which was the game we had, now over a year ago, and then New Horizons and Splinter Will. And we tried some different tweaks to the rules and changes as far as how that's going to go forward. And so it's interesting to see, for example, just one small change was no limit on exploration vessels for this particular, the New Horizons campaign. And because there was no restriction, people spammed survey ships And that's sort of where the Klingons got their first jump ahead of everybody else. Carnarvon took a slightly different tack. They built cruisers with prime teams to do their surveying, slightly less effective, but far more combat capable. And of course, we've seen the benefit that has been the Carnarvon. So just interesting to see how the little tweaks we've made to the rules, our house rules, if you will, and how that's changed and impacted the nature of the game. Certainly, the economies in this game much larger than in the previous game. We were talking with Daniel, our GM. It was interesting to see just a slight increase in the map. I think it was the Klingon Empire had just reached 100 EP before their epic downfall in the New World campaign, versus now you see there's 3 factions that are over 100 and another 3 clipping or knocking on the door of 100. And we're not even in the late game yet. I would argue we are sort of in the early mid to mid game as far as how things are going. We've certainly bumped into each other and going on from there. So it's very interesting to see how it's all sort of evolving and how it's going and so on and so forth. Daniel is, as you can see, furiously writing in the notes. No GNN, Galactic News Network, this week. But as you can see, Daniel is spamming the chat. Excellent. With all sorts of latest and greatest news. So I will let you look at that while I continue chatting away. Let's slide over to the map so that we can quickly look at the fleet cap numbers and sort of where everyone's at, generally speaking, when it comes to the map. So I'm just trying to manage that on the fly here. Let's slide over to the map now. I say that, and of course we came to this screen, which is not where we were looking to go. I understand what you're saying. Tony, sort yourself out and get organized. Yes, sir, ma'am, respectively. But I will take a minute, again, Big Slow Target saying, okay, weird, could easily be an issue on my side or my math. So it looks like there's been some discussion about fleet cap and how that's going, and where the numbers are. We'll talk about that in a brief moment, but because we're talking about fleet cap here in a second on the map. But we'll talk about fleet cap and how that ties in with each player, each faction, and how that's going forward. Okay, now let's slide over to the map. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the exciting map. Okay, we're going to go over the fleet cap numbers, and then I will ever so briefly and quickly discuss how fleet cap is calculated and then where the discrepancy in numbers may or may not be. Okay, let's start with the top. Here we are. The Borak have 104 ships in their fleet currently. You can see their fleet cap is 401. The defense factor is 383. Attack 165. Oh my God, he says. 165 attack with 383 defense. Now, obviously, there's some crippled ships in there, but it's almost Tholian-esque in its disparity between the attack factors and the defense factors. It is nutty. And if you're wondering how is that possible, it's because the light or the small ships in the Borak fleet, the destroyers, the frigates, and so on, they suck, for lack of a better way to describe it. They have a unique role to play in fleet combat. Long story short, and you will see it here, those small ships, destroyers, and frigates respectively, all have low attack factors writ large. But they have relatively beefy defense factors, especially when crippled. For example, a Carnarvon frigate of the same vintage and year, shall we say, has a 2-3 attack. This is very common for a lot of Y-era frigates. They have a 2 attack, 3 defense. When they're crippled, however, they go to a straight 1, meaning 1 attack, 1 defense, and they're easily popped. Meaning the total defense value of the ship from polished perfect to, smoking wreck is 4 points of damage. It can soak up 4 points of damage, and then it's done. It can only ever inflict, shall we say, a gross number of 3 potential attack factors, right? The 1 when crippled and the 2 when not. Now compare this to the Borak frigate by comparison. The Borak frigate is a 1 attack and a 3 defense when polished and perfect, and a 1-2 when crippled. What that means is the total attack value, based on our calculation before, is 2 versus the Carnarvon 3. But the defense factor is a total of 5 versus the 4 of the Carnarvon ship. So what does that mean, basically? Well, in a lot of these fleet combats, we use, or it is a common practice to use, the smaller ships as chaff or flak to soak up damage and then cycle them out of the battle line. Boom! Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, a coffee has been fired. I'm just waiting for it to populate in the chat so I can see who it was who sent that dastardly coffee. It was the Anonymous News Network. I have a feeling I know who that is. Big cheers to our anonymous reporter from the Deep Space Galactic News Network. Quick sip. Here we go. Oh, yes. The coffee, it powers me. It's like I was just watching some clip of a Green Lantern cartoon. In brightest day and blackest night, no evil shall escape my might. The coffee that flows through my veins powers me. Here we go. All right, so the Borak, 104 total ships, 165 attack, 383 defense. Like I say, it's all those tiny ships. Boom! Oh my God, I've been fired at again. Will my shields hold up? Something isn't working out here. It's crazy. All right, I'm going to take another big sip of this juicy, wonderful, invigorating elixir of life we call coffee. The Klingon math screw-up, oops, $5 penalty, has fired a photon of caffeinated goodness. Our goal for today was 4 coffees. That's Quattro, 1, 2, 3, 4. As you can see now, we are halfway there. You, my friends, can help us complete the green line on the bottom. Don't be shy. Feel free to get over there to coffee.com/newworlds and fire away. All right, so we talked about ships and the frigates and the attack factors and the defense factors. Enough with the boys in blue Borak. Let's talk about our Carnarvon friends. Wow, 230. That's the ship count. You think that's the attack or defense factor. No, that's just the number of ships they have floating in space. Oh my God, they have 517 total attack, 937 defense. Their fleet cap is 939. They're running for 1,000. They're going to be the first faction in the game to crack 1,000 in total defense factors. Now this is going to potentially bite them in the furry posterior, because the Carnarvon, werewolves of space. We'll talk about that in just a moment once I get through all the numbers here, but keep that number in mind. 939 total fleet cap, 230 ships. Oh my God. They are steamrolling the rest of the galaxy, at least in this context. Okay, the Federation, next on our list, has 76 total ships. I prefer 77 myself. Peak of Punk, Height of Disco, the year Star Wars came out. But 76 is great number 2, with 168 total attack factors and 303 defense. Interesting to note, with the nearly 25% less ships, they have an equivalent attack factor as the Borak, obviously less in defense factors. The next faction on our list here is the Hydrons, the second faction, I guess technically, what am I saying? The third faction in the game to crack on this list, 100 total ships in their fleet. They have 211 attack factor, 417 defense, fleet cap 419. Hydrons being our boys in green in the bottom right corner. Basically behind my picture here, you can see a little green above me. Those are the Hydrons. The next faction on our list is the ISC. 91 total ships in their fleet, 231 attack, 400 even on the defense factor, with a fleet cap of 406. Interesting to note with these guys, because up until recently, they've sort of kept their numbers low, relatively speaking, much like the Federation and a number of other factions in the game, slowly growing but not exploding as far as total fleet cap goes. But notice that their ship count is now steadily increasing. Very, very interesting. Next faction on our list is the largest economy in the game, the second largest navy, with a total of 172 ships in their fleet. Interesting, they've got 58 fewer ships in their fleet, but their attack factors are nearly 100 more than the Carnarvon. 611 their attack factor, 815 their fleet cap, tying their defense factor. So interesting to note. Of course, this is because the Klingons are at MTech, the sort of early Christopher Pike era of technology, versus the generation before, and these are not accurate comparisons, but I would say the Y era is more like Enterprise with Jonathan Archer and all that business. That's probably the closest comparison you can get. So the Y ships are noticeably less combat capable, but look at the numbers: 172 to the 230 of the Carnarvon, and yet 100 more attack factor. That's quite the delta. And of course, there's other advantages that come with MTech ships, vice Y ships. The Kzinti, close to 100 with 92 total ships in their fleet. 218 is their total attack factor. 379 their defense, with a fleet cap of 396. Our friends the Lyrans, the third largest military in the game, with 143 ships in their fleet. 393 is their attack, 650 defense, with a fleet cap of 656. These guys, it's interesting. We talked about them in the last live stream, and if you missed that, please, after this is done, go check that out. The fleet cap, the fleet of the Lyrans is an incredibly potent fleet based on their M ships they're building. The Lyrans, in this sort of pocket of time in the game, are really overperforming in the sense of the ships that they have available, the combat strength they can bring to a fight. They are, I would say, really punching above their weight. And keeping in mind, remember, the Lyrans are in that sort of second tier from the bottom up of economies. But that doesn't speak to their ability to cause you pain and harm if you're a player in this game. And you'll see here in the map in a second, where the Lyrans are positioned. Obviously, they've got their negotiations with the Borak, and they're steadily growing their territory into former Borak space. But if I'm a neighbor of the Lyrans, whether it's the Kzinti to the south, the Carnarvon to the north, or the Klingons to the northwest and west, I would be carefully observing what the Lyrans do, because at this point, shall we say, the menu of ships that the Lyrans can select from is more potent than the Klingons. Even though the Klingons were the first to hit MTech, they're definitely in advanced relative to everybody else. They are kicking butt and taking names, the Lyrans that is, relative to all the other MTech factions in the game. And currently, and we'll go through the map here in a second, but I believe there's 4 factions out of the 10 that currently have MTech. Paravians, our good friends, have 42 total ships in their fleet. That is 2 more than their total economy. And they have attack factors of 95, defense factor of 191, fleet cap of 197. So interesting that they don't have too many crippled ships writ large, but nonetheless, they have quite a collection of and concentration of ships, and we'll go over that in a moment. Our good friends, the Tholians, the last faction on this list, have a total of 118 ships in their military. So now that we've sort of gone through the list, that's the Tholians, the Klingons, the Lyrans, the Carnarvon by far, the Hydrans, and the Borak. 6 factions, if I get that, there we go, 6 factions that have over 100 ships in their military. So that's over half the factions in the game have over 100 ships in their fleet, and 4 of those factions are MTech factions at this point. So it's very interesting how this is all going to go. All right, let's slide back to the starbase, and we can discuss how fleet cap is calculated as we go forward. Let's slide back. All right, so fleet cap. Fleet cap is basically the amount of ships, assets that you can support from your empire. Now, as I talk to you, I'm just going to pull up my Borak sheet so I can reference the calculation. There's a mathematical calculation on how we figure this out. And one of the things that goes into that is the tech level of the faction in question. So, for example, when we're figuring out fleet cap, that is your economy multiplied by a number based on your tech level. So we have, as a reminder, we have the W era tech, which is the sort of pre-enterprise level of technology. We have the Y era of technology, which is, like I say, Jonathan Archer, that kind of thing. Or more maybe like the early Axonar, prelude to Axonar. That's sort of like what that looks like. Then we have the M era, which is the introduction of like the Constitution class. That is the early Christopher Pike era. And then we have the GW. And in the GW context, this is sort of late era Kirk, by example, with the refits of the Enterprise sort of making it all skookum and high speed. So that's sort of what that looks like. As far as the math, it basically goes 5, 6, 7, 8. W era, you take the economy, boom! I've been shot in the face with a photon. Bring it on, Lust Muskrat. Thank you very much for that sweet coffee delivery. I'm going to take a quick sip and lubricate before I go diving more into these mathematical numbers, because, you know, when it's math, I got to be sharp. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we are 3/4 of the way to our goal. One more coffee, and we're there. Help me out. All right, so 5, 6, 7, 8. W is 5, Y is 6, M is 7, and GW is 8. So when we think about those numbers, that sort of calculates your fleet cap. So I just want to throw out here, now we don't know where the Carnarvon are necessarily with respect to their technology. Who knows? Maybe we'll look at the map here and we'll see that they've hit MTech. But let's just do some quick math. So we know that the Carnarvon economy is, what was 120... Looking at the map again, one sec. The Carnarvon economy is 126. We multiply that number by their current level of technology. Let's assume Y. So Y is 6 times 126 times 6. That means their fleet cap, or at least what they can support in fleet cap, is 756. So why does that number matter? Well, remember when we went back to the map and we calculated their fleet cap, they were coming close to 1,000 with 939. So, Tony, I don't see the Carnarvon experiencing a whole bunch of pain here. What's going on? So when you're at war status, you don't have to pay fleet cap upkeep. You just have at it. You can have as many ships as required because you're fighting a war. The economy sort of supports that. That's sort of the rationale. Uh-oh, Tony is doing math. I know. So there's no impact for a faction when they are at war. However, when that faction goes to peace, they have to pay 0.05 or like 5% cost for every point over their fleet cap. So 756 minus 939, just by example for right now, is a difference of 183. You times that by 0.05, they are going to be spending 9.15 EP every turn to support the fleet that they have. Now, for an economy like the Carnarvons, they don't care about that. That's a drop in the bucket. Who gives a cadoodle, because that's a word, about that. But the other factions in the game might. So, for example, we talked about the Lyrans with their economy in the 70s. We have the Borak in the 90s, the Hydrons, almost 100. The Federation at 100. So it's just a matter of doing that math and that calculation. But I'll give you an example of how the MTech makes a big difference. Now, we know that the Borak economy, I'll just use it as an example because, well, I'm the Borak. The Borak economy is lower than the Carnarvon by a substantive amount. The Borak economy is 91.5. Now you times that by the fact that they're at MTech, so MTech gives them a 7, so you times that by 7, and they have a fleet cap of 640. Now, of course, that's not the 700 and some that the Carnarvon have. You know, money makes money. But if you look at the fleet cap for the Borak, their current fleet cap is 401. They're light years away from hitting, or, you know, a substantive distance away from hitting that 640 number, assuming their economy doesn't shrink, and we know it will. So all that to say, the fleet cap calculations are interesting to note because when you go to peace, there's going to be an extra cost associated with maintaining your fleet. You, as a player, need to make that strategic choice, that tactical choice, turn after turn after turn, as to whether it is in your best advantage to maintain potentially obsolete ships in your fleet just to maintain the numbers. Do you want to have a lot of cruisers, which, with a larger defense factor, eat up a lot more of that fleet cap? Or do you have a small number of cruisers or heavy ships and a lot of those frigates? If you're the Borak, by example, and we've seen this play out again with that dynamic of crappy small ships and decent big ships, maybe it makes more sense to have more big ships. Or if you're like the Klingons have fantastic destroyers and frigates. Maybe you just have a couple of capital ships like a battleship or the C-4B, or even just their D7s. You have like a couple of those, relatively speaking, per battle force, but you have a boatload of those disposable frigates and destroyers because they just eat up far less of that fleet cap. But they give you a lot of firepower in, especially for the Klingons, in each battle. Because remember, a lot of these Klingon M ships over-index on attack factors relative to their defense factors. So, I know, it's mathy, it might be boring, I do apologize. Let's get into the map. But that's how fleet cap works and how it kind of impacts the game as we go. As Del says, spend. Because I mean, if you're not gonna win if you don't spend any money. And money, honey, is the name of the game. All right. That's what Ava says. It's the name of the game. All right, so let's slide into the map, talk about what the Klingons are doing, and see if we can see who's got what and who's going where when it comes to all these ships and all the dynamics that are happening in the game. Let's slide over to the map. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Vassal, the graphically uninteresting but nonetheless detail-oriented map that we use for this game. All right, as you can see here, and just as a reminder, I'm going to zoom out here to the maximum. This is the big map, and of course, it doesn't even fit on the whole screen. I got to scroll a little bit up and down. You can see in the bottom right corner, there is the good Hydran Empire, growing in leaps and bounds and creeping up the side of the map like a good mold does. I suppose mold is maybe black, not green. We'll say that this is a vine creeping up the side of the fence. Nonetheless, they are prolific, they are fertile, and they are spreading their wings. You can see in the middle here we have a mix of red and blue, very polarizing colors. That is, of course, the ongoing tussle between the Borak and the Paravians. On the far left, you have the Tholian Empire, the big bad rocks of the galaxy, making a hard time for everybody. The Kzinti, the space tigers of the universe, are in the white and black in the middle of the map. The blue, the big blob of blue in the center, that's our good friends, the Federation. And then, of course, we get to our factions in the north. The Lima Bean, which is not really a Lima Bean anymore. It's sort of growing. I'm not sure how to describe it anymore. The Lyrid Empire. With their potent fleet and fighting force, they are spreading their wings and going places and doing stuff. On the top left, you can see, or harder to see, is our good friends in black and gray. That is or gray and white, I should say. That is the Klingon Empire. The green and yellow at the very top center, that is our Carnarvon folks. And the top right is the ISC. All right, with all that said, let's zoom into our map and let's talk about the Klingons. Okay. So we can see here the Klingons. Last episode, we saw a whole bunch of M ships in the top corner trying to liberate the fog of war from these various hexes. So they have been very successful in getting rid of a lot of those fog of war hexes. There's only a few up there, and there's a handful of ships, 4 of them, D6Ms currently floating up there that you can't quite see. So I'll lower the map ever so slightly, and you can see there's the 4 of them up there. Now, go to maximize again. So here we are. We have the Klingon homeworld. I'll just take away the ships real quick so you can see the star, which is the homeworld for the Klingons. And on that homeworld, we can see we've got a couple of ships here. We've got a monitor, which is the LMN. Interesting to note, again, monitors prevent ground assaults on bases and planets and various things. So that's very interesting they have a monitor there. Notice the stats for the monitor. It's only got 4 defense, but 6 attack. Classic for Klingons. They've got a Y-era tug there. That's the T4, a D6M, which is the M-era cruiser, and a DGB, which is the early-era M tug, which is a very useful and potent ship, especially later in the game. All right, let's hold up, because we haven't done this in a while. Let's look at the Klingon capital and see what they got there. Interesting. So, as you can see, there is a YDK, that is the space dock of the Y variety, Y-era. And they're also building a base station here, completed, I believe, in 2 turns. And then, of course, they have 14 ground bases of the Y variety sitting there. So interesting that they're building more Y bases, at least at their capital. Interesting. Okay. So as I'm looking at this, I'm sort of like digesting it, shall we say. I am sampling and savoring the delicious flavors of the Klingon Empire. If you're getting hungry, you're not the only one. So we have the YDK and the YBS under construction. Note this YDK, or it was a YBS being upgraded to a YDK. That's 2 YDKs within 2 hexes of the Klingon homeworld, not including the YDK that's sitting here. And it seems there is a base. Is it under construction? Let's just see if we can move this off there. Yes, they have a base under construction that will complete this turn 74. So that's very interesting. So they have double bases on the wormhole. They have they're building double bases on their homeworld, and they've got another YDK sort of in between. I would go out on a limb and say the Klingons are very cautious when it comes to this wormhole and what's going on there. Interesting. Okay, so speaking of wormhole, let's go to the wormhole. You can see we got another TGB, which is, again, a tug. The T4, the Y-era version, and the Tholian Border Squadron. Let's see here. Klingon Tholian Border Squadron. Okay, Smitty just said something very interesting. We're gonna talk about that in a second. Okay. We have the B4B, which of course is the M weapon upgrade for the B4, which is a Y-era battleship. So you see that's the 1214. It's a beast of a ship. The C4B is the upgraded weapons of the C4, which is a Y-era dreadnought. So it's the C4B, straight 8. The E4M, which is, he's got 13 of them, which is the hot rod frigate with 4 attack, 3 defense. We still have 42. Jesus, my God. It's the answer to any question, 42. 6 F4s, or sorry, 42 F4s sitting there on this hex. We've also got a D6EM, which provides a little bit of EW, but it's more of a survey ship. We have 2 technically, I guess they're not W era. They're like early Y or late W. They're a really not great, I guess, they're Y-era frigates, which are the E2s. And then, of course, we have this ground assault freighter here with the 4 G factors. Of course, if they're going to do what they're going to do, that's what it is. Okay, so the FTL with 4 G factors, impressive. All right, that's all on this wormhole. And as you recall, that wormhole goes to Tholian space, and they are holding back the tide of the Red Rock menace. Yeah, that's exciting. Logistics Squadron 2, just because of all the activity here, I'm kind of curious. Klingon Logistics Squadron. You can see Logistics Squadron 2 is 2 theater transports with a YFEL. That's the survey freighter, so they're just towing it around as they go places. Looks like these logistics squadrons are really just trying to get rid of all the fog of war hexes, so moving them around to do that. If we go over to the east coast of the Klingon Empire, you can see a little interaction with the Carnarvon. I see a YFF here in Klingon space. Now, I don't see Klingons reacting to it from Blue Fleet to smash it, destroy it, or whatever. I have a feeling there's an exchange of ships going on here to be able to accelerate some research and development, perhaps. Interesting that there is a little squadron up here of 2 D6Ms and 6 E4Ms. That doesn't seem like a lot, but keep in mind, 6, 7, 8. This is 1 ship less of the total or the maximum number of ships that a D6M can command. And 14 plus 24, 38 total attack factor is more than enough to pop and destroy any Y-era base that you're going to find. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Technically not quite within reach of any Carnarvon assets, but it's definitely standing guard, shall we say. And of course, we've got some F4s kicking here, and then Blue Fleet. Now let's just take a look. Did the Klingons reinforce Blue Fleet with anything? No, still just a bunch of F4s, but there's 6 of them, more than enough for that single Carnarvon frigate. So what's going on with that frigate? We'll have to see. Scrolling down. we see the introduction or the exchange, shall we say, between the Lyrans and the Klingons, still maintaining that fog of war boundary in the neutral zone. Note the Carnivons are pushing through. You're going to see 1, 2, 3, 4. The Carnivons could get through this fog of war shortly, and then we could see either a neutral zone being established or perhaps some minor border tensions between Klingon, Carnivon, and Lyrans. We'll have to see how that goes. Interesting to note over here on the west coast, southwest of Klingon territory, see this little blue, this white and blue here? This would indicate, if I take away the ships real quick, that they do not have supply into this area. This convoy is probably, fixed supply that is, this convoy is probably providing extended supply for Klingon ships, but they really got to finish these bases before they can take advantage of this particular resource. Now, if I take away the ships real quick, interesting to note, look, 1, 2, 3, 4, they're obviously getting that resource. 1, 2, 3, 4, they're just outside of the range for this one. So once these two bases come online, they'll be able to take that resource and away we go. Note the push. All these D4Es, these survey ships, D6E, and these expeditionary fleets really pushing south past the Lyra neutral zone, really trying to get down to where the Kzinti are. This is going to happen fast and furious, folks. So watch this over the next couple turns as we go into the fall. This spearhead effort to try and get down south, there's going to be some interesting stuff that's going to happen here going down the line. And how they interact with the Kzinti and or the Tholians will be very, very interesting. Okay, so that's the Klingons. Again, lots of these. Look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 of these M-era cruisers being used to try and explore fog of war hexes. Don't get me wrong. It's not the worst use of a ship, but once this fog of war stuff is sorted out, this D6M fleet is going to come south, and it's going to pose a lot of problems for our Kzinti and potentially Tholian friends. Mark my words. Okay, so that is the Klingons, my friend. Let's slide over to the Carnivon. Interesting things happening with the Carnivon. Let's take a quick look at their homeworld. We got a couple tugs there. Emperor fleet, which is a Klingon fleet. I'm assuming there's some R&D exchange. Let's take a look at what they've got in Den Fleet. Carnivon Den Fleet. Interesting. So they've got some convoys that they're pumping EP into. So this is an interesting tactic that's been used by players is to if you can't spend all your money, what are you going to do with it? Well, they park it in a convoy, for example, which can hold 20, or tugs that can hold 10, and they throw the extra EP that they can then tap into whenever they need it. The only problem is, of course, if there's an attack and those things are destroyed, the EP is lost, but pretty safe on the homeworld, all things considered. So let's take a look at the Carnivon capital as a whole. You can see we've got a YDK, 14 planetary ground bases, and of course, Cheeseburger is the name of the homeworld. Lovely. Looks like we've got a R&D team with a YFF from the ISC close to arriving at the homeworld of the Carnivon. Of course, these two factions are in alliance, so they are working closely together. We can see there is a tug with 10 EP working its way down this way, right next to a unknown derelict. So what will this be? Will it be an AI ship that will attack whoever approaches? Will it be a rich treasure trove of technological discoveries? Or will it be a pervasive pathogen that will devastate the population, only the only victims being canine helixed DNA? Who knows? We'll have to see. But as we can see here, there is a little bit of activity on the border, but very, very little. Lots of exploration ships trying to, meet out all the fog of war hexes between the Carnivon and the Borak. We can see here there's a bunch of Carnivon ships that have shown up on Borak bases. And then, of course, a bunch of the fleets around. So we got, look at all these. We got 3 destroyers, 3 frigates, a drone bombardment cruiser, a cruiser. We've got, oh my goodness, Topaz and okay, let's look at these up real quick, because we did this last time, and the fleets represented the majority of Carnivon forces. So Topaz, And then there was Ruby. Ruby, here we are. So we've got, slide these over here. So these two fleets are Topaz and Ruby right here. We've got Home Fleet, Carnarvon Home Fleet. You can see that there. Sapphire Fleet, which is in the bottom corner here, Carnarvon Sapphire Fleet. And then, of course, Emerald Fleet, which is at the very bottom, Carnarvon Emerald Fleet. But not to be outdone, there's also Diamante, Diamond Fleet, Carnarvon Diamond Fleet, and that's over on the far end here. So this represents a lot, the majority of the total combat effectiveness of the Carnarvon. Look at all this, especially Emerald Fleet, DNCCs, 7 cruisers, 3 light cruisers, 9 destroyers, 14 frigates, drone bombardment cruiser, drone bombardment destroyer. Wow, so much stuff. Topaz Fleet alone, we have some drone bombardment destroyers. We've got 7 destroyers. Only 4 frigates on this one. But Ruby Fleet makes up for it with 13. So you add those two, that's almost 20. And then, of course, we've got Home Fleet, which has 13 frigates, 3 destroyers, drone bombardment cruisers. It's just, with 230 odd ships, this is just, the Carnarvon are killing it. Like, just killing it. And this speaks to their strategy from the very beginning about building ships. Honestly, the Carnarvon, the 2 success stories of this game so far are the Carnarvon and the Klingons. 2 different strategies when it came to their initial exploration, and both giving them a really good return on their investment. Without a doubt, the Carnarvon are the biggest military in the game, at least by ship count. They are the bully of their quadrant, so to speak. They have a good relationship with the Klingons, which is very advantageous for them. But those 2 factions between the exploration first and the explore through cruisers, those 2 strategies have obviously paid off very, very well for both factions. And I'll say the differential between them is expanding because the Klingons continue to grow, and the delta between them it's a little, like, it's growing ever so slightly. It's got like 12 points difference between the Carnies and the Klingons. But of course, that is nothing compared to the next closest economy, which is 101, the Federation. So very interesting to see how this is sort of all evolving. All right, as we go down here, let's finish off with the ISC. Then we'll go back to the chat, and I just want to go over the chat. That's the chat. We'll go over the chat. There we are. Okay, let's start with the ISC. All right, so a couple of interesting things with the ISC. As previously noted, they've got some exploration fleets working, getting rid of some fog of war hexes. As we discussed, we've got the exploration and expansion into Borak space that we see here. For those of you who aren't part of our Discord channel, there was some diplomatic exchange between the ISC and the Borak. And we have, as part of the sort of agreements that are in place, some withdrawal to be able to permit the ISC to take certain territories. So you can see this particular tug right here move forward and took a resource that was previously a Borak resource. I have a feeling next turn we'll have ISC ships take over those 2 planets. There was a deal struck for that. We'll see the rewards of that deal next turn. And of course, as we saw here, we've got, Truth. These are all the ISC named echelons. So let's see if we can put some math to this. All right, so we've got Truth and Enforcement. So Truth in the bottom here, we got a cruiser, light cruiser, destroyer. Enforcement is a command cruiser and destroyer. So essentially 2 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and a light cruiser. Then we have Law Fleet and Judgment Fleet. So you can see Judgment is a cruiser destroyer, Law is a command cruiser, light cruiser, and looks like 3 frigates. So again, another small task group there, but supported by a tug, a base, and a hospital ship. Up here, we've got Providence Fleet. So Providence Fleet is command cruiser, destroyer, 2 frigates, and you see there's a 3rd frigate there with a tug. And then, of course, Home Fleet, which is its own thing. Let's pull up Home Fleet. And this has been sort of their focal point of strength. You can see Dreadnought, cruiser, light cruisers, destroyer, frigate, scout, and then of course prime teams. So yeah, it's looking good. And I have a feeling we've talked about this more than a couple times. I have a feeling the ISC are on the cusp of MTech. I don't know what the restriction or the constraint might be for MTech for these guys, but I'm expecting MTech from these guys anytime now. You can see here on this is the Hotel 7 wormhole. The Foxtrot wormhole. So this is the wormhole that goes into Paravian space where the Borak and the Paravians are tussling. So you can see you got a frigate, destroyer, 2 destroyers, a frigate. Wow, I love the organization here. So there's 4 frigates, 2 destroyers, 2 command cruisers, and a cruiser on this YDK, and of course an RDT. What's on the other side of that wormhole? Well, let me show you. Scroll down. So this is the Foxtrot wormhole, and you can see Destiny Fleet has come through, and just pulling up Destiny Fleet again. This is the named echelons. So you can see here, Destiny, command cruiser, destroyer, a total of 5 frigates, and of course there is another 2 frigates there. So 7 frigates, a destroyer, and a command cruiser, and there's a tug right here. I imagine they're trying to explore this to be able to build a base on the other side. It'll be interesting to see the interaction between the ISC and the Borak, considering what's going on in this neck of the woods. But you'll have to be on the Discord and listen in on the diplomatic discussion back and forth that we see. I am just noticing now, put in the chat if you saw when this happened, Stephen Lentner, our latest subscriber, subscribed during this episode. Ladies and gentlemen, Stephen, big round of applause. Welcome to the family. Thank you for joining us here. Okay. I just noticed that now. Okay, so we've got that happening there. And then, of course, scroll back up to the ISC corner here. We've got Integrity Fleet. Oh, let's see. Back to the named echelons. Integrity Fleet. Where's Integrity? So we got a DNCLDD on the homeworld there. And then, of course, this is the hotel wormhole that goes to Federation space. And Order Fleet has a light cruiser destroyer, and it looks like 4 FFs with a 5th one sitting there guarding this wormhole. So there's a lot of wormhole guarding going on, especially with the IC. I imagine they're trying to go through the wormhole to establish a foothold on the other side. It's a very rational thing to do from a security perspective. It'll be interesting to see, like I say, how that interaction goes. All right. So that's the ISC. That's the Carnarvon. That's the Klingons. Let's slide back to the chat and say hello. All right, let's dive into this chat. I want to just go over some of the stuff that Daniel was saying. Okay, let's pop out this chat and see if I can follow along. All right, the chat is popped out. Okay, let's scroll up here to all the Daniel discussion. All right, Daniel, start it off. We'll go through the news items, shall we say. Daniel says Klingons went from 165 ships to 172 ships, difference of 7 ships. Attack factor increase of 35 points. Highlights. Federation added another independent world to their trading partners, Entropia. The Kzinti and Federation space are seeing a rise in Orion pirate bases. I wonder if there's anything behind that. Carnarvon diplomatic team was killed when peace talks collapsed in Kilo 17. We'll have to go back and check that out. Big Slow Target says, okay, weird. Could be an issue on my side of the math, possibly. Could be I was comparing to an old map, possibly. Daniel says, Borak and Paravian war continues as a line of bases in the north falls, causing yet more resources to fall out of supply. Okay, I blame me for the mix-up. This is Big Slow Target. Apparently, I saved an old map with the wrong turn number and was looking at a 2-turn jump. Fair. Okay, sliding back in, we've got, so let's say hello to everybody. We've got Daniel, Dell, Lost Muskrat is in the house. Devin Dean is here. Bill Smitty in full stereo sound. Big Slow Target, obviously. Of course, Steven has joined us. We had earlier in the broadcast, where are you? Matthew. Volume seems kind of low. One thing I noticed, if you're watching on your phone, by example, depending on like what the speakers are on your phone, we have I broadcast in stereo, and so that should be good. But if there's some kind of issue with one of the speakers that you're using, the volume may come across low. In the past, by example, the volume has been too loud, or that's been the feedback. So we've adjusted the audio levels to be able to make it a little bit more acoustically friendly to those who are a little more sensitive. So that may be what you're seeing there. Apologies for the teasing earlier. It's just sort of part of the community here where we rib each other fairly often. And I'm on the receiving end of much of it. Right. So Big Slow Target. Del Smitty, Big Slow Target says, farther than you think. Okay. Okay, what do we got here? Liren, the liver of New Horizon is hi Chuck. Okay. Big Slow Target. Yeah. Smitty says to go to BSM, BATSM, SBM is cheaper than straight YDK to SBM, and he's correct. It's about a difference of about 5 EP, I think. I have to go back and check it. But Big Slow Target saying, yes, I need the tech for that, meaning that he doesn't have the tech for the bases to match his M tech for ships. The way our tech tree works is, obviously there's different verticals for technologies, and one of the core techs that you need to sort of work on is base tech, meaning you have to research to the point where you can build the new M version of bases. And one of the things you'll notice is when you see a faction upgrade their Y planetary ground bases, the Y PGBs, when they get upgraded from Y PGBs to straight PGBs, they're close to getting those upgraded bases, because that's the first milestone in that journey. Big Slow Target says, farther than you think. The rush was to M, and I missed the P4 requirement for several turns. P4. What's the P4 that you're referring to? Whoop, there goes my coffee. Let's take a look at the Borak turn, see if I can make out what he's talking about. R&D. Okay, the P4. I don't know what... Oh, Phaser 4. That's what he's talking about. Phaser 4. So Phaser 4s are the heavy-duty ground phasers that you need, and you need that tech in order to be able to get bases. And... like the PGB, because the PGBs use Phaser 4s. So if you didn't research Phaser 4s, it really retards your progression. Retards meaning slows down your progression. In a previous game, I did exactly the same thing. I had exactly the same thing happen. I didn't do the research on that, and I had to catch up, and it took a while to get those bases. And while other people were getting modern bases deployed, I was still struggling. It made a big difference, especially in those various combats. Okay, so Phaser 4, got it. Let's get back to the chat. Romeo 5 is anti-Andromedan patrol and quite deliberately too far from Carnarvon bases. Excellent. So they're very nice to each other. Bill Smith is laughing at that. How does that EP storage work given the limits on one convoy missions per turn? Oh, that's very interesting. So I have not in the management of convoy missions, I have not seen the storing of EP on a convoy being a mission. Although when I think about it, it is. I think, Big Slow Target, you have raised an interesting question and concern that I think we all need to review, especially the GMs, in the context of this game. We may have been doing that wrong this whole time. Hey, we're human, we make mistakes. Let's discuss that on the Discord channel after this episode is done. Let's discuss storing EP in convoys and how that impacts convoy missions and the limitations of that. Let's do that in the Discord chat. All right, what else we got? We got Big Slow Target says, I held off on doing it because I was concerned about that very issue. You can have multiple convoys holding EPs. EPs represent food, dilithium. So Bill is from a narrative perspective explaining what it is, but that doesn't necessarily change the fact that it is, according to the rules in Federation Empire, it's a mission. So let's discuss it. All right. Welcome to Stephen Lettner. That is what Bill is saying. Daniel is doing whoop whoop, welcome. Phaser 4s, hi Steven. Interesting point, BST. Yes. Okay, so that's discussing those particular issues. Let's slide back into the map and discuss. We'll talk about the Kzinti and the Federation. We'll cruise around the bottom talking about the Tholians and the Hydrants. Then we'll take a break, and then we'll finally discuss the of the bases from the Paravian side. All right, let's slide over to the map, and I will see you there. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting off in the Kzinti corner of space. As was mentioned before, the Kzinti are one of the factions in MTech. They, I believe it was in Marquee Fleet, we saw the combination of ships. Look at this! Marquee Fleet with a tug. All right, let's just take a quick look at Marquee Fleet. All right. If I was not a very trusting man, I would be a little concerned about all the strike cruisers that the Kzinti have built, 6 of them, are on the border with and close to the artery of access for the Borak into Paravian space. Now, there are 2 hexes worth of fog of war, and there would be a supply issue, be able to come through there. So I'm not overly worried about it, and we have a good relationship with the Kzinti so far. However, the Kzinti are using their M ships and placing them there, which is a little unusual. There's so many interesting things happening here. Okay, so the Kzinti are creeping in. Or rather, they're on their side of the border for sure. But it's interesting that they've chosen to put their M ships there. We'll talk about the Federation here in a moment. Excuse me, burpee. Let's talk about some of these other ships. Earl and Const, I can't remember what the Const stands for. Kzinti, here we are. Okay, so we got Constable Fleet, which is a CC with an FF. Okay, no big deal. Earl Fleet, because I like myself a good Earl. Earl. Again, survey ship with an escort frigate. What else we got here? We got Prince Fleet. So let's get rid of these. Let's look at Prince Fleet with the Kzinti. Le Prince of Wales, because, he's British. YCC, okay. We've got Home, Baron, Count, and Olympus all on this side of the map doing exploration, so I'm assuming they're all those survey ships. We've got Ally Fleet 4 and 5. Interesting. Let's look at Ally Fleet. Kzinti Alliance Fleet 5. Kzinti Alliance Fleet 4. More survey ships with prime teams. Big truck going by my window. I don't know if you can hear that. We've got crippled frigates. I'm assuming there was a battle. Hold on. Survey ships here. There was an attack maybe on this planet here to take it. Possibly. We see a cruiser sitting there maintaining security. So we have lots of survey ships happening. We have base construction that is still occurring. This base will be completed this turn. And then, of course, lots of exploration. So I think it looks like the Kzinti and the Borak need to have a little chit-chat just to, make sure that we're all on the same page. We'll see how that goes. Very obviously, they've got a trade. They've got trade with the Federation. The Federation are looking like they're becoming a trade hub of epic sorts. Let's slide over to the Federation and take a look. So look at this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They are just a trade. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 different trade routes. Man, that's 3 EP. That's a big substantive difference. And that's only, I'm only thinking about the trade routes with the minor factions. The trade routes with the player factions, I believe, are 1 EP. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel. 1 EP back and forth. So they've got 2 trade routes with player factions and then 4 with non-player factions. So that would be 2 EP plus 2 EP. That's 4 additional EP. That's pretty good. The Federation are kicking it when it comes to that. Okay, now here's an interesting question. We've got a prime team with the Dreadnought and frigate going into Paravian space near where the Borak are. What's going on? I don't know. I would argue, and this is a completely logical, valid thing, based on the conflict that's going on in Paravian space, the neighbors are testing the limits. They're encroaching on the boundaries. They're They are nibbling at the edges, you might say, and understandably so. However, I am curious as to how this is going to evolve going forward. Interesting to note that this base isn't complete yet. Won't be complete for a while. 1, 2, 3, 4. This military convoy is extending supply so that this ship can do what it's doing. Yeah, this is going to be interesting what happens here with the Federation. I'll be curious to see what happens with them and what they decide to do. The question that has not been answered yet is, are the Federation siding with one side or the other, like, for example, in the Paravians, and are they looking to push the Borak in some way, shape, or form? And here's another interesting wrinkle. If the Federation are going to do that, are the Kzinti going to get in on the action too? Because they worked, potentially, if they work together. If they work together and they're looking to cripple the Borak, here's a thought experiment. Let me just throw this out there. Let's slide back to the chat. All right, here's a thought experiment for you, ladies and gentlemen. Generally speaking, without looking at the map, we know that the Borak are clawing, biting, struggling with every nuance that they have to be able to push the Paravians back. It's not an equal fight necessarily, but it is a challenging one nonetheless. While the Borak are doing this, and let's say, for example, the Borak successfully take the new Paravian capital at some point in the next couple turns. Theoretically, and most likely, when they do that, they'll probably suffer catastrophic casualties because the Paravian capital is such a hard target. Okay. They take the capital. They're weakened. And then in that weakened state, both the Kzinti and the Federation, and maybe even the Hydrans, attack. All three of them attack the Borak in this new Paravian pocket that they're in. The Borak go from being attacked three ways in the north, from the Carnarvon, the Icy, and the Lyrans, to then being attacked by, potentially, the Hydrans, the Federation, and the Kzinti in the south. There is no break. There is no retreat. There is no there's a word with an R that I'm trying to look for. I can't find the word. I'm so sorry. But no matter where the Borak go, they're getting, in this thought experiment, they're getting jumped on every which way. And if that's the case, that would suck for me as a player. But would this just be a mechanism for all these factions to be able to knock out somebody else? Like, so for example, you could arguably get two birds with one stone here. You're taking out the Paravians, or you're letting the Borak take out the Paravians, and then you come in and you nibble on and gobble up the Borak space, which means that the Borak theoretically get wiped out, the Paravians are wiped out, and then the Federation, the Kzinti, and the Hydrans, and maybe even the Tholians kind of nibble up the rest. So, no way! Nobody would do that to you, Tony. We love you so much. So anyway, yeah. It's an interesting thought experiment. That would suck if that's what's going to happen, especially since, you know, from my perspective, it's like, why can't we just all, you know, work against the colluding powers? But apparently, if the colluding powers are the Federation, the Kzinti, and the Hydrans versus the Lyrans, the Carnarvon, the Klingon, and the IC, you know, it's, I guess, if it's about clubs and cliques, the Borak and the Paravians are all out on their own, and we're getting hammered on every side by everybody else. So, anyways, it'd be interesting to see how that all works out. Yeah, that would be interesting if it went down. Don't get me wrong. I'm going down with a fight, without a doubt, if that was the case. But, you know, we'll see. I have to see what goes. Clear Screen 101, welcome to the show. Thank you for the question. So the question is, what game is this? As of the beginning of this show, if you're, what are we at? An hour into the show. This is a 4X homebrew game inspired by the rule set of Federation and Empire. Sorry, I'm laughing at what Dell said. So inspired by Federation Empire. Federation Empire is a strategy game, turn-based strategy game published by Amarillo Design Bureau. And so this is a Star Trek-inspired 4X game, war game, turn-based war game that we play online here with you. And that's the story, Morning Glory. All right, so that's what we've talked about here. Let's go back to the Federation and see what they got going on. All right, so we talked about the Dreadnought going down there, and obviously this frigate over here. So what makes me think the Federation might be thinking other thoughts? Well, as we look up here at this border area, you can see the Federation is moving with purpose into former Borak space. Now, in this context, it totally makes sense to me. We had established a border before, and then they're moving in, but they're just exploring. There's no military stuff here necessarily, and there's no real concern, at least from my perspective as a player, because we know the ISC, the Lyrans, and the Carnarvon are sort of taking over territory, and the Federation are just sort of like, instead of sitting back and letting the Lyrans and the ISC take everything, they're going to get in their piece too. I get it. It's understandable. The Dreadnought in the south, that's a little more questionable, but nonetheless, stuff going on there. Okay, let's talk about their interaction with the Hydrants, and I'll move my head to the other side just so I'm not totally in the way. So we can see here there's a diplomat about to exchange hands or exchanging hands. There's a YDK there. I'm sure that diplomat will make its way to the capital, where you see there's an ISC and Paravian diplomat already. And of course, there is going to be trade going back and forth once there's a commercial convoy here somewhere. Yeah, this commercial convoy will hit this YDK when it's complete, and there'll be a trade route there. So the Federation are becoming a hub of trade without a doubt. The irony is the Borak wanted to do this exact same thing. They wanted to play this playbook, and unfortunately, the rest of the players had other plans. So, anywho, that's curses. That's just the way the cookie crumbles. All right, so that's how that's going. Let's take this moment and talk about the Hydrants as we're going here. Okay, so a couple things. One, we see the proliferation of fleets from the Hydrants pushing and exploring, getting their fog of war out of the way. So again, this is the exploration phase of the Hydrant Empire. They are pushing, doing this, fantastic. The thing that catches my attention is what you see right next to my head and just up here. So the Paravians did a little tricky thing. And I have to ask Daniel how this worked. So the Hydrants had this YDK, YTG, excuse me, with money, 10 EP embarked. Now this money, this ship was over here, and I believe it was actually on this base. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So I think it was strat moved to this place here. So here's a question for you. Strat moving happens at the very end of the turn. And there was discussion that maybe this YTG had done I'm assuming an operational move where it moved into a hex, took the money from the YTG, and then moved back to its homeworld. Now, keeping in mind that Y ships only move 4, even if it was positioned right here, it wouldn't have enough movement to get there. Now, if it was operational movement and the YTG went this way, sure. Was it maybe a combination of strategic movement where the YTG moved strategically first and then the Paravian tug moved strategically the second? Now, I know when it comes to operational movement, it happens in phases or pulses. And you can certainly have ships transfer funds like that operationally. I don't know how that works strategically. I think that's a discussion that we should have. The impact would be that this tug would have the EP embarked, okay? And even if the money had been transferred and that movement all worked out, the tug has the EP embarked on it. meaning it's got the EP in the tug. It has not deposited the EP onto the planet because that only happens at the beginning of your turn. And strategic movement happens at the end of your turn. So sequence of events in the sense of the sequence of orders or sequence of action in the game. The EP in question is sitting in that tug on the capital. Got to wait for their turn before all that stuff happens. So I think I'm going to have a little discussion with Daniel. And the reason why I'm particularly paranoid about it is because this is the issue. The Hydrons are lend-lease agreeing. That's not a word. They're sending money to the Paravians. And the question is, why are you doing that? If their interest is to buy stuff from the Paravians, maybe. Is their interest to prolong the war? Maybe. Are they just looking to support the Paravians? They don't like the Borak? Maybe. But I haven't had any interaction, really, with the Hydrons one way or the other. So what would be their concern in this regard? A question that was raised at one point was, why don't the Hydrons roll in en masse with military, like, let me try that again. Why don't they attack the Paravians and take territory? Because the Paravians are compromised. They can't defend themselves as they might have in the past because they're in the middle of dealing with me, the Borak. Why not do that? Well, obviously the Hydrons are taking a different approach. They're more diplomatic. There's lots of reasons why they're doing what they're doing. But nonetheless, very interesting to see that they're choosing to financially support the Paravians. Why? Again, if I'm going in a conspiratorial way and thinking there's some kind of collusion between some factions and the Hydrons, maybe their objective is to prolong the conflict as long as possible, cause and force the Paravians or the Borak to suffer massive casualties in trying to take the Paravians out. Maybe that's what it's all about. Who knows? And if that's the case, that sucks for me. But it would be an interesting strategy if that's how it's going. So anyways, I think the Borak need to get on their proverbial horse, diplomatic horse, and start chit-chatting with folks and figure out what's going on. Perhaps the summer has been a diplomatically quiet time for the Borak. I think we're going to have to fix that going into the fall. All right. So that's what's going on with the Hydrons. So let's slide over, and I'll move my head over here in a second. And talk about their Tholian friends. So Tholians, they've got the derelict in the north there. So we still don't know whether that derelict is a treasure trove of technological marvel, a carrier of pathogens that will wipe out the rocks because, rust disease is a thing. And or is it an alien AI that is going to come to life and devastate the inanimate objects that are the Tholians? We'll see. We shall see. But Commander Lassard of Police Academy fame is still manning the wormhole with 2 YDKs to support. And, of course, if we look at if my eyes don't deceive me, there we are. Home fleet for the Tholians. Where are you? There you are. Holy data. The stack of these ships is mind-boggling. Okay, I'm just going to put them down here so it's a little bit easier to see. Maybe organize this a little better, Tony. All right, I'm going to put them down here just so it's easier to see all the stacks. Cruisers, 6 of them. Destroyers, 36 of them. YPCs, 10 of them. And CPCs, or YCPCs, there's a mix of them here. 13. So 13 plus the CPCs so it's 23. All those ships, by the way, the DDs, the CPCs, and the PCs can all pinwheel together, which is crazy because they're all the same size class ship, and they can do that. So you've got 30. What was it? 33. 33 plus 36. Jesus, that is 69. 69 ships that can pinwheel together, plus the cruisers, which I don't think can pinwheel, but maybe they can. There's 6 of those. So the Paravians have a very powerful defense factor deterrent for the wormhole. And I'm praying that these 2 factions don't tussle each other too much. To be fair, if the Tholians attacked the Klingons and got through, the Klingons have a lot in the backfield that could support fending off the Tholians. And of course, they have the economy to do that, right? With an economy that is nearly twice that of the Tholians. The Tholians, by comparison, don't have the same capability to project force, in my opinion, humble opinion that it is. And so I wonder if it is to the Klingons' advantage to go through the wormhole. Now, technology is the issue. Do they have the tech to do that? Who knows? I don't think so, but we'll have to see. Hopefully these two factions maintain their Mexican standoff. Nothing happens here. There's no issue, no problem, whatever. But we'll have to see how this goes forward in the coming turns. All right. That is the and of course they have a good exchange with the Kzinti. So the Tholians, the Kzinti, the Federation, and the Hydrons, that's all those guys. Let's slide back to the chat real quick before we start talking about the Borak and the Paravians. All right, I see some chat. Let's pull up the... Where are you? Pop-out chat. Boom. Okay. Pop-out chat says, Big Slow Target. Well, I'd imagine the Federation crossed the neutral zone with Borak permission. Otherwise, they would be at war economy and technically at war. They wouldn't do that, right? So this is a very good question. If the Federation have crossed the border, whether it's in the north or the south, according to our rules, they're at war status. I think Daniel has a note about this, so we'll have to talk about that. But if they've crossed an established neutral zone, they are at war status. The one in the north, we talked about with them going, the Federation going north into the southern part of Borak space, they would be at war status. They would also be the same if they're going into Paravian space, because technically that's Paravian space at this point, even though the Borak currently control it. So as far as the neutral zone is concerned, that's Paravian. And so that works on multiple levels. So for example, the ISC who went through that wormhole should be at war status. The Federation crossing that border should be at war status. The Hydrons, if I look, don't have any combat units that haven't been captured crossing that border, so they, I guess, aren't at war status. So we'll have to clarify that with our wonderful GM to figure out what's going on in that regard. Daniel says, just like operational movement, you can choose the order that your ships move in strategic movement. So then the question is, was the tug already at that base, the Paravian tug already at the base, so that when the Hydron tug arrived, it transferred the money, and then the Paravian ship moved. Either way, the money is still sitting in that tug, which isn't noted on the map, just to, just as a technical thing, just to make sure that there's clarity there. And the money is in the tug, won't be deposited onto the homeworld until the beginning of the Paravian turn, and they go first anyway. So it's a definition without a difference, but it's just important to note there. Correct me if I'm wrong, Daniel. Big Slow Target, the Derelict, or is it a wormhole variant that lets you send fleets to alternate wormholes sometimes? I don't know. That would be interesting. You have discovered a technology that allows you to open and close wormholes at your discretion. That would be interesting. Okay. Interesting things to think about, talk about, and so on and so forth. Let's take this moment and slide into the Borak corner of the world and see what's going on here. Here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Borak Bone. This is the territory that is the domestic and natural homeland of the Borak people. We can see here that we've got R&D happening on wormholes. Very interesting. A bunch of YFFs, as was mentioned, a bunch of Carnivon YFFs that have been captured in various locations. We've got one there, and 3 there. So a total of 5 Carnivon ships have been, shall we say, donated to the war effort. We have 2 Vultures. These are Y-era dreadnoughts from the Vulcans. The Vulcans. Slap me upside the head, silly. The Romulans over here on 4th Legion. And then, of course, we've got some Lyran ships that are doing their business as they're going in various directions. I am a little confused. Just want to make sure I know. Okay, this is captured. This is captured. Okay, so these are all captured ships. Okay, good. All right, so we've got that happening. We talked about the ISC in this corner, as discussed. And then, of course, we've got the Federation right by my head here, creeping into, because they're a creep, creeping into the southern of Borak space. But this isn't where the action is, Tony. Show me where the good stuff is. Okay, I will scroll down, slide over, and show you the exciting and delighting things that have happened. I'm going to take away the ships real quick so we can see bases. The big news of this episode is the destruction of 1, 2, 3 Paravian bases. And they were in the India column in India 53, which was just above the planet of Zork, in India 55, and in India 57. Now, what is significant about these bases? Well, as was described by Daniel, yes, the destruction of these bases limit the supply reach of the Paravians, which we can assess at this point is not at 4. Now, how do you know that, Tony? Well, their closest bases in the kilo column, the YDK, the YBS, and the YBS, they'll have a reach of supply of 1, 2, 3, 4. Well, if they had supply 4, these resources would be in supply. Very clearly, the Paravians are still at supply 3. Mind-boggling, considering how late we are in the game and all the other, factions and where they are technologically. So it's very interesting that they're only at 3 supply. So 3 supply for the Paravians, which means that they can only logistically reach to this hotel column till about here. 1, 2, 3. This is, so from a hotel down to, 1, 2, 3, yeah. So hotel down to Hotel 56, across to about Foxtrot 57, Foxtrot 58, and out to Delta 59, and then down here, the Delta column. So they have, in fact, why am I doing that? Let's show you through the supply menu. Set supply at 3, and we're going to show you the supply of the Paravians. So there's a couple things here. One, this planet of Zork is devastated, so it is not providing supply to these things, and it looks like the colony is being registered as a supply point, and that it is not. So let's just see. We're going to we'll just devastate this. Maybe that'll change anything. No, that doesn't change anything. We'll just undo that. We're just going to remove this for a second. And I'm going to remove this for a second. And this is the realistic supply reach of the Paravians at this time. So you can see, based on this footprint, this is where they can be. Now, I can't change the supply to 4 to represent the Borak by comparison, but I want you to just mentally capture this image in your mind. Okay? We're going to put those resources back. Now we're going to take away the supply menu for the Paravians. We're going to set supply to 4 because the Borak have 4 supply. And then we're going 4, please. Thank you. And then we're going to show you the supply menu for the Borak. B would be at the top, right? Federation, Klingon, Riemann, Gordon. There we are. Okay, Borak. So this is the Borak supply. Notice the overlap. So we can see that the Borak have supply reach. Now, Paravia, which is currently under Borak control, is what's extending the supply like this. The planet is still devastated, so it does not have, it does not have supply reach like this. However, if a base was built there and or there was a unit in that hex that could provide extended supply, this is what the supply would look like. So think about this, and then I'm going to bring back the ships. Okay. So we can see here that Vulture Fleet moved down, and I can tell you that there were a number of battles that occurred. There were 3 battles, obviously, for the various YBSs, and you can see up here there's a collection of ships, a bunch of crippled frigates. Those crippled frigates were defending the base, and there was the Paravians had established a strong point at India 55. Well, I hit it with my strong stuff, and we destroyed the base and crippled their ships. This is advantageous for us as the Borak, because now they are going to have to move their ships to a base before they can repair them. So they'll move them to a base, they'll repair them, but they have to move on one turn. And then next turn, they'll be able to repair them, and then they'll be able to move wherever they need to move to be able to attack, defend, whatever that may be. So these ships are sort of vulnerable a little bit. We'll see what happens with these guys and where they go. But keeping in mind, they got 2 Y docks here. So those ships can go, like they can move 4, right? And they're in supply. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. They can go to these YDKs, repair, and they'll be good to go. So there's that. Obviously, there's a couple of ships here. This ship, 1, 2, 3, these 2 frigates are in supply. This one is not. So this ship is out of supply, and it'll be interesting to see what happens to that ship and what they decide to do with it. It'll be very interesting to see how that goes. And then, of course, we've got a number of fleets down here. Vulture fleet. So there were 3 battles for bases in the India column, and where Black Dragon is right now, there had been a base in that hex. Currently, Black Dragon is occupying that hex, and we'll see what happens there. So these guys are sitting here doing their thing. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, we've got a fleet down here taking Paravia. Now, there had been a fleet that moved in to took Paravia. There was a fleet, Green Dragon fleet, that moved to attack this YBS here. Interesting, and I think this was to protect the strategic movement path of the tug. Vulture fleet moves south to defend this base. And Green Dragon was not a robust fleet. It was like a survey ship and a command cruiser. Potentially enough to pop the base. But Vulture fleet, just to give you an example, is a pretty big fleet for the Paravians right now. It has a total of 6 cruisers, which are good. And it has a total of 22. That's weird, because in the battle, I was shown 16 frigates, and yeah, I'm showing 22 here. Clarification, Daniel, just want to make sure that's good. And then, of course, 2 prime teams. So this fleet was big in every context, big enough and certainly bold enough to be able to do damage and cause issues here. But they didn't get in the way of taking Paravia, but they certainly got in the way of this base. So that's what's happened there, and it's very interesting how that sort of evolved in that context. So what do we have now as we look at the map? Well, let's look at this. We'll just... this fleet is the core concentration of Paravian strength, period. They have this fleet here, which is a cruiser and 5 frigates. But that's pretty much it. That's all they got. Remembering that they only have 42 ships total. They got a tug over here, which is building a base. They got a YSR over here and a bunch of little ships floating around. So, yeah, they're concentrating on their capital. So what do the Borak have by comparison? Well, on the planet of Paravia, the Borak have, what is it? What fleet is it? Blue Dragon. So Blue Dragon's sitting there. And you can see here, whoops, I went too far down. So we've got 2 command cruisers, 2 cruisers, these are all Y, a tug, and a total of, anytime you're ready, 16 frigates. Now, keeping in mind, Borak frigates are not as potent as Paravian frigates. And according to this, he's got 22 of them, and I've only got 16. So if this is going to be a fight, I don't expect the Paravians to win this fight, but we'll have to see. So that's what's going on right here. We've got Blue Dragon, and then, of course, there's Green Dragon here, just for comparison. So Green Dragon is, like I said, it's a command cruiser with a prime team right down here. So these ships here, frigate, a DDE, plus this, and this is what we got. So all combined, I would say that the Paravians, if they were to move into this hex and attack Paravia, they've certainly got the advantage, no doubt. Okay, so what do we got here? We got Takesis, Red, and a bunch of stuff. Okay, let's look at Takesis and Red Fleet for S&Gs, shits and gills. Was it Red Fleet? Is that what we were? Red Fleet, Takesis Fleet. Borak. There we are. Borak, Takesis Fleet. Here we are. And then there's the stack. Okay, so we can see that there are 2 CAEs in the fleet boxes. And then we've got a DDE, a bunch of crippled frigates here. So we've got a total of 5 crippled frigates, and then, of course, a bunch of Carnarvon frigates, which are the 2-3s. They have the same punch as Paravian frigates. Although interesting to note, and I'll just pull this out as an example. Oh, that's not what I want. See, I hate that. Okay. When you flip a Paravian frigate, it goes to 1-2. You flip a Carnarvon frigate, it goes to 1. So that's just an interesting note change between the two of them. Okay, so Carnarvon frigates, there are 5 of them. Borak frigates, there are 5 of them, and those are crippled. On the stack, we've also got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 crippled frigates. So there's lots of cripples. But we've also got another 2 CAEs, so now a total of 4 M-era cruisers in this cluster. And there's 3 DDEs as well as the 1. So there's a total of 4 escort destroyers, or early destroyers, early destroyers. 4 early destroyers, 4 early cruisers, and then, of course, the Y ships there. So more than enough to defend the base against the pittance of frigates that the Paravians have in this neck of the woods. But it's going to be interesting to see sort of how this evolves going forward. Because, again, there's just a lot of stuff going on, shall we say. So the question is, with the introduction of the M ships from the Borak, do we think the Borak have a fighting chance of either defending against the Paravians trying to take back their former homeworld, or something else? Dr. Onishi's psychological lab. Well, that is yeah. Okay, let's ask the question. May I ask, please, are the battles played out on the table, or is it just this fleet versus fleet and roll some dice to see the outcome? So here's a question for you, Doctor. When you say played out on the table, what are you meaning? Because in the world of the Starfleet universe and the Amarillo Design Bureau, Starfleet Battles is the tactical ship-to-ship battle simulator, and Federation Empire is the strategic warfighting gameplay. Let's slide back to the chat and discuss that. Okay, so are battles played on the table, or is it just this fleet to fleet, fleet versus fleet, and roll some dice to see the outcome? Battles in Federation and Empire, there's a specific system for battles and how that gets played out. In the normal Federation and Empire game, yes, there is tabletop battles that occur in the sense of you are rolling dice and you use the what's called the battle board and various other things. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, check out the tutorial for combat on this channel in the tutorial playlist. So that's the combat tutorial, the one that I talked about last week about potentially remaking. So that describes how combat works in Federation and Empire. What we don't do is individual ship-to-ship fights using SFB as a stand-in for the battles. In Federation Empire, there's 2 kinds of combats that occur. One is the small-scale combat, and then, of course, the big fleet combats. Small-scale combat is resolved using the rules of small-scale combat in the Federation Empire rulebook, and then, of course, the same thing for the big stuff. At the end of the day, the process for us and how we input information and how we resolve the battles are as follows. We have a very geographically diverse group of players all over the place. UK, United States, Canada, and various other places. So we can't physically show up in the same place and roll the dice. What we can do, though, is and what we do, is based on a battle, the game master will send out an email to the 2 parties involved, or potentially more if there's 3 parties, but typically 2. So sends out an email to these 2 parties saying, this is the battle. You've got X number of ships on one side, X number of ships on the other. What do you want to do? And we write what are referred to as battle orders, or like a set of instructions based on the rules, our understanding or our intent about what it is we want to do, and sort of a little bit of a thought flowchart as to sort of in the sense of like once X number of ships are crippled, retreat, or if the enemy tries to retreat, pursue, or I'm going to fight to the death, blow everything up, whatever. So there's this series of instructions that we provide, and then the GM will do the dice rolling and work it all out in real time. Now, do we roll actual physical dice, or do we roll... There's a dice roller in Vassal that we do use as well. And the good thing about using the dice on Vassal is we can sort of track it if that's required, versus, you know, do you trust the GM to roll dice, just rolling dice? Now, that being said, our GM loves rolling dice, and that happens from time to time for different aspects. But if you were trying to do this in real time with people, that could be really, really time-consuming and take way too long. So, yeah, we write those instructions. The GM plays out the battle, and you get a response email with the outcome. Now, sometimes if it's convenient and or, you know, people are available, you can watch. I often do this with our GM. I like to watch it all go down. Nothing changes. My instructions are still set in stone in the sense of, like, I've sent in that email, and I'm just watching how the battle unfolds. Because for me, as a player, there is value in watching how battles unfold in that context. That's how that works. And certainly, you know, if Daniel is in the midst of rolling battles, he's more than happy to have you sort of watch if need be. But also because I run the channel in the sense, and I need to tell stories, it's very useful for me to be able to see how the battles go down, because it's beneficial to tell the story about how things happen. So, yeah. Thank you, New Worlds, for the detailed explanation. Hopefully it wasn't too much. But, yeah. So, yeah, let's see what Daniel says, we do not use SFB to resolve battles. That would take so long. And Bill said, 99%, it's never seen, but Daniel, our GM, sets everything up. Each player is asked for their orders. This includes the BIR, battle lines, how to take cripples, routine and so forth. Yeah, so if you're curious about how battles happen in FNE, I point you to our tutorial playlist, and that talks about reaction, battles, and so on and so forth. Yeah, so that's how that works. 110% answered my question. Woohoo! Excellent. I like to over-deliver. Yes. Okay, I'm going to take a quick sip to replenish and wet my whistle. Stand by. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you're the Dr. Onishi's psychosis lab, you know that we're all a little bit crazy if we're on this live stream and playing this game. So if you're like Dr. Onishi, please hit that that subscribe button, maybe a little thumbs up to tickle the algorithm in the right way, and then away we go. I'll watch the vid after your stream. Excellent. Thank you, Doctor. Pleasure to have you along. So yeah, that's the latest and greatest of what's going on in the game. A couple of questions for you. All right, audience. Do you think there is a second round of collusion against the Borak? So, for example, we knew that the CLI, Carnarvon, Lyran, and ISC Alliance, you know, they were working together to pressure the Borak to get that out of Dodge. Are we seeing the beginnings of the same thing happening in the south between the Hydrans, the Gazinti, and the Federation? You tell me. Second question. Do you think the Borak have a fit fighting chance of actually taking the Paravian homeworld? Do you think they should A, attack their new homeworld outright? They have 20 ground bases, they have a YDK, 22 frigates, and 6 cruisers. Do you think we can make it happen? Do you think there's enough firepower to be able to resolve those battles? Or do you think there should be another strategy? For example, don't bother attacking the capital, just take everything else out. All the other bases, all the other ships, and just decimate their economy to the point where they just are struggling to survive. These are ideas, thoughts. Tell me what you think. Dr. Onishi is asking about a link to the Discord. So the Discord chat, again, if you are so inclined, you can head over to coffee.com/numerals. And if you support us on the Coffee and Discord tier, you can join us on our Discord channel, partake in the witty banter back and forth, and so on and so forth. So yeah, you can absolutely head over to Discord with that link. It'll auto-populate if you provide the coffee Discord tier, or sign up for the coffee and Discord tier, and away you go. You can partake in our witty banter, the back and forth, the witty repartee that is our community. And considering the psychotic nature of some of our participants, maybe we need you, Doctor. Let's see. So that's how that goes. So we talked about the Borak and their various issues with the surrounding territory and the Paravians. What about the other factions? Do you think the Kzinti should be concerned about the Klingon coming south? What about their interaction with the Lyrans? How about the Federation dealing with the Lyrans and potential Borak space? Are the Hydrants, do they need to break out of their corner and do something significant? What about the ISC spreading their tentacles into Paravian space? So many options, so many issues, so many things to think about. What do you think, and how do you want to participate? Let me know what your thoughts and strategic advice are for the various players in this game, and how we should move forward in that regard. With that said, thank you very much for attending today's wonderful live stream. If you haven't already, and you've been with us this long in the live stream, please consider being like Steven, who joined us on the live stream. Hit the subscribe button, join us on the show, and keep up to date on what is going on in this game, in this story, in this narrative. And perhaps you, like Dr. Onishi, joining us on Discord, can be, if you're a coffee supporter, be one of our next players in our next campaign. All right. That's it for me. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. And remember, say bye, 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 bye. All right. Ciao, everybody. See you next week. Bye.